Welcome to my home.
You mean my home?
Okay, it's neither of our homes.
But it is our podcast.
Glitter and gay.
Coming your way.
So thanks for tuning in
Today.
One of the reasons I am very excited about doing this with you is we have a lot of success stories, and I think that is what inspires people. I think we're both aligned on the fact that we want people to come out of this podcast feeling recharged, realigned with their goals, and out of whatever funk that has them feeling like they can't get there. And I think the only way to really achieve that is to talk about the not so great stuff. It's fun to talk about the success and the triumphs and the times where we really crushed it. But I think one of the reasons that you and I are soul sisters is because we've uniquely not the same stuff, but we've been through it, right? I mean, I won't volunteer any stories for you, but you've just shared with me so many things, a few of them we have in common. We both struggled with our relationship with alcohol. There a lot of my darkest days are tied to my drinking, for sure. I think we've both had different kinds of struggles with romantic relationships and intimate relationships. Um, uh, I've definitely struggled with my health, and the things that came out of that. I really struggled with fitting in the gay community. And it all kind of becomes this cycle, right? They all just start to feed each other. You can live down there in your problems. And no matter what somebody's problems are, I think it's something we can all relate to, right? We've all been through hell and back in our own unique way. There's very few people, even my wealthiest friends, my happiest friends, we've all have those trauma moments, those pain moments that we source from. Which has me very curious because you're this wonderful, energetic, vibrant woman that people are drawn to. People find very interesting and very fascinating. And it's probably very easy for somebody to think that this has always been your life. Glennda has always been this successful real estate agent. She's always earned a great living. She's always been super happy. She's always had a great sense of humor. And is that true?
I was the last kid picked on the playground
Mm-hmm.
every day of my life. They would line us up and they would say, Rebecca Bryan, Teresa Shepard, Patricia Myers, to be on their team. These three boys. They were always the captain every single day. And they would get down to me and this one other boy. And he was like a savant. So, like a musical savant.
Mm-hmm.
And they would realize they were going to be stuck with me. And they would be like, no, not Glennda Baker. She's awful. She's terrible. This is the whole class. So the whole second grade, the whole third grade, every year of my life, the entire time I was in school.
Oh, girl, me too.
And I think that moment, it made me hate school. I hated it. I hated to go because nobody picked me. Nobody wanted to be my friend. Nobody wanted to have lunch with me. I went through stages where my mom tried to help me be popular. She wanted to be the cool mom. We would have parties at my house. And of course, everybody was down for a party. Come on, give me a
Right.
break. But I was just struggled so hard to be chosen.
Mm-hmm.
And that plagued me my entire life. And I'd be lying to you if I said that somewhere deep down, even with everything that I've been able to build and everything that I've been able to accomplish, I'm online dating.
I do.
And
I also want to say about the online dating, we have specifically avoided a lot of conversations around it because I want to have a lot of online dating juice in this podcast. I feel like there is some gold in there.
there is, but something happened yesterday I haven't told you about.
Okay.
On the ride out here, I realized that someone unmatched me.
Mm,
And it was somebody that I kind of had an interest in, like more than just a little bit of an interest. Like I saw some potential in him, and he unmatched me. And that little girl from second grade, I could feel her inside of me.
hmm
So I, even today at 55, thinking back to that little girl on the playground, that cool boy, the captain of the team, didn't pick me, you know?
Yeah.
So I went right back to that. So, I think that even with the resolve, like any wound, it's healed, but there's still that scar there. And if you've ever had like an injury or stitches or something where there is a scar left, that area is is sensitive.
hmm
It's more sensitive than your regular skin,
Right.
where you've had that repair.
Yeah.
And I almost liken it to that same feeling. So it's healed, but if somebody touches you in that scar, it feels just a little bit more sensitive than if it's just somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I would say that the whole like not being chosen thing is probably my most vulnerable scar.
And do you feel like that has served you today? Like, do you feel like having that scar, having that experience, do you feel like, does that show up for you today still in either a negative or a positive way?
So we talked a little bit last night, and you didn't realize when you were talking that what you were talking to. Like you didn't realize when you talked about being spared or being prepared
Mm-hmm.
when we were having that conversation last night, you didn't realize how I was taking that content in. You didn't realize how I was consuming that. And I always say I'm not everybody's cup of tea,
Mm-hmm.
but hopefully I'm someone's shot of tequila. You know? I
Yeah.
mean, and that's the thing. It's like you said, just 10%. Just 10% of the people.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like, goodness, I was probably spared from somebody who was a complete and total asshole.
Total. You were. You
Yeah.
absolutely were.
And I woke up this morning. I was talking to you about that text that I got this morning from this just amazing person. And I was thinking to myself, oh my goodness, I was spared from somebody who was a complete and total asshole to have the opportunity to get that sweet text from someone this morning. So I don't know. I think that the touch of the scar always reminds me to be so thankful for the healing.
Yeah. Of
Yeah.
course.
And where I am right now. Because it's almost like you can't hurt me. It's almost like I'm invincible in those places.
Yeah. Do you get, with your social media presence, obviously you get tons of love. Do you ever get like nasty people?
Oh my God, all the time.
And like, how do you deal with that?
Um, I I don't it's always user number 8671214 384. It's always the egg, the person who doesn't have a photo.
Right.
It's really easy to be mean when you're anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
Um, on social media, I don't really think about it too much. I've gotten into some little skedaddles with Grant Cardone, and there's this little boy in North Carolina, this rich kid. Oh, I've got 500 houses. I work 4 hours a week. Bullshit. So those people, I kind of take it a little bit more seriously, but I don't give a shit because again, like I'm living this life for me.
Right.
I don't give a shit what you think about me. It doesn't matter to me. Those war wounds while they're sensitive to the touch, that shit made me strong as battery acid.
Yeah.
So I think about, like, that guy who unmatched me, and I think to myself, like, "You just gave me the opportunity for somebody else."
Yeah.
So, while the sting of it, it's just like that scar. You touched it, it was more sensitive, but ultimately, that's my battle wound, like, that's my strength.
Totally.
Yeah, like my rod in my back. You don't know that about the rod.
You made a slight mention of it last night, and I was like,
Yeah.
save it for the pod.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so, like, my rod, I had scoliosis as a child, and I have a rod in my back, and my mom always told me that that was my strength. It was my lightning rod.
Hmm.
And so she always told me, she's like, "You're like a lightning rod, pumpkin."
Oh.
So, yeah, it's my strength that keeps me held up straight, holds my head up straight. She always told me, "That rod is to hold your head up straight. Don't kid yourself."
Okay, I just got tingles because scoliosis is part of my story in a much different way. In a much different way. But, people who don't know, but I think most people who follow me know that my struggle with weight has been, a huge cornerstone of my life. And it really started through childhood. I was up and down and up and down. But as a young kid, I don't know why. I remember in like second and third grade, I actually really felt like I fit in. I felt like I was funny and I felt like kids liked me. And I think at that young, none of us had really realized that being chubby or being skinny was a thing, right? But I do remember specifically in fourth grade that on our report cards, which were like simple report cards, we were in elementary school, they would weigh us and measure our height. And that always went on your report card. And I remember in fourth grade, everybody coming back and being like, I'm almost at 100 pounds. And I remember that it was like they were excited about it. They're like, I'm about to be 100 pounds. And so I don't think I had any idea how much I weighed. And I remember I went and got on the scale and I was 165 pounds in fourth grade and they wrote it on my report card. And that was the first moment that I was like, oh, I'm way different. I'm way different than everybody else. I'm like, they're excited about the fact that they're about to be 165 pounds. And I remember knowing in that instant, I was like, do not go sit down and be like, well, I beat you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
Yeah.
165.
Yeah,
Right.
this is not that moment.
Yeah. I remember that was the first moment that I would like, I had shame around my weight. I was like, oh, I was like, I'm dramatically. And I was like, oh, and that's why I look different than everybody else here. So I remember from then I went home, I was upset, I told my mom, and, my mom had always struggled with her weight, our whole family did, and that was when it became like a conversation at home. So cut to, this goes on for a while, I start getting teased for being fat, it becomes over the next 2 or 3 years, it becomes a very clear thing that I'm fat, I'm the fat kid at school, and also the gay kid at school, so it was a double whammy.
But do you realize at that point that you're gay?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. But I didn't come out of the closet until ninth grade, but I was very aware. And I was teased a lot for it, people because I was a little bit effeminate and kids assumed that I was gay and I was just different. And ironically, when I finally came out of the closet, people stopped teasing me, which is just a different life lesson altogether,
Yeah.
right? Just owning who you are and then people don't touch it. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, they're like, it's not a sensitive spot anymore. It's not a secret.
Right.
Um, Anyway, so in 8th grade, we all had to get scoliosis checks. And I remember it was in the locker room and we had no idea that it was happening that day. I showed up and there was a doctor of some sort in there and he was like, "You're all gonna have to get in line. Um, we're gonna once you're at the front of the line, you're gonna take your shirt off. We're gonna weigh you, and then you bend over and you slowly roll up, and then I guess they just look at you and they can tell by looking at the way you roll up whether or not you had scoliosis. And so, of course, I get in the back of the line, and my heart is just racing because in the locker room, I always changed in the shower. Nobody was ever going to see me without a shirt on. And I was like, "Oh, we're gonna have to line up and take our shirts off." I mean, I mean, you might as well have told me it was a shooting range and this was death.
Right.
And so I go up there. I'm the last person in line on purpose. Everybody is already cleared out. I do the fastest shirt off, like most insecure, roll up as fast as possible, quickly put the shirt on and like race out, feeling like nobody saw me. The next class was banned. And Philip, who was actually somebody I considered a friend at the time, came over, and my weight when they weighed me was 280 pounds. And they put it on a sheet, and you put it on the coach's desk, and you walked out. So the next class is band. I'm sitting there with my saxophone. And Philip comes over and he goes, "Wow, 280 pounds." And loud enough for like our whole section to hear it. And I'm like, I was like, what? And he was like, 280 pounds. He was like, I can't believe you're 280 pounds. And everybody hears him. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm like dying inside because I was like, that's the number. That's like
Yeah.
definitely I was
How
like,
does he know it?
how does he know it? And the whole band room ends up, it becomes like the talk of the band room. And band's a big class. There's like
Yeah.
70 or 80
Everybody's
kids
in
yeah.
band.
Yeah. And for the rest of 8th grade, nobody called me Tyler. I was 280 pounder. And I remember like trying to use my sense of humor and be like, ha ha ha, like I don't
To
care.
diffuse it.
Totally. And went home and I was devastated. I
Right.
mean, devastated. And
Yeah.
just like crying. And my mom was devastated for me. She felt my pain. She struggled with her weight. And of course, I'm a mama's boy. She did not like that
Yeah.
this happened at school. She thought she was doing the best she could. She thought she was doing the right thing. And she called the school pissed.
Yeah.
She's like, this was
Oh, yeah.
poorly. She was like, this was poorly handled.
Yeah.
And she was like, my kid is being tortured over his weight, and we need to do. You need to right this wrong. Like, you need to do something about this. So I don't know that my mom has made this phone call. I get called into the principal's office the next day, and I'm like, what is going on? And she has the school nurse in there, and it's my mom, the principal, and the school nurse, and they're like, we understand that this happened. We're really sorry. How would you feel about us putting you on a diet and you being on like a guided diet throughout the school? And I remember I was like, I'm all in. And since the whole school knows about this, it was the first time I was like, I'm gonna lean in to whatever this thing I'm embarrassed is, and I'm just gonna like do it, and everybody's gonna watch. And so my mom didn't know this, but my mom, that was back when Slim Fast was like a really popular thing. And you had like
Yeah.
these meal
can.
shake, the canned meal shakes. And so I started stealing my mom's Slim Fast, and that's what I would at the school cafeteria, I would drink a Slim Fast as like my lunch. And I thought, I was like, I'm gonna make this funny. I was like, I'm gonna make it like a thing. I'm on a diet and the whole school is gonna watch. And as you can probably imagine, it was not a success. I got made fun of horribly for it. The shame spiraled. I gained so much weight. By the time I was leaving high school, I was well above 300 pounds. And it really created this story of, I'm going to use humor to get myself out of situations. I'm going to pretend I don't care about things. That led me into a life of isolation, a life of addiction. I started smoking a pack a day. I was drinking 2 or 3 bottles of wine a day. I was smoking a lot of weed, and like that I was just numbing out. And that was my 20s, and I remember every day just feeling like so tortured. And I had this one friend who introduced me to the band Fish, and I made friends at Fish concerts. And it was the first time I had like real community, and feeling like I belonged in something, just being totally myself. And they loved my flaws. They loved my insecurities and my sensitivities. And I remember my best friend David and I were at a Fish concert, and we were dancing, and I almost fainted because I was so out of shape and I was so unhealthy. I mean, I was drinking so much. I was eating so poorly. I was not drinking water. And I remember I sat down on the floor and I was like, I'm having weight loss surgery. I was like, I'm tired of this life. I'm just like so tired of having my entire life ruled by my weight. And I had gained and lost 100 pounds so many times.
Yeah.
I would do the fad diet, it would work, and then it would all come back. And I had also heard a lot of negative stories of people who had weight loss surgery. And that was like the story of why I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'm not having weight loss surgery. But in that moment, it was just like, I'm fainting at a concert, the only place I've ever been happy, and I can't even enjoy this. And that was for whatever reason. I remember I looked at him and I was like, I'm getting weight loss surgery when we get back. And I was like, and I'm gonna lose this weight and I'm gonna be the person I've always wanted to be. And we went back. I set up a meeting the next day. I had just started working at Triple Mint and just had health insurance for the first time. And so because of that, because I also didn't have money, this was back when I was still poor, and the timing was just right. It was divine timing, and I went in, and insurance covered it. If you're fat enough, insurance does cover your the surgery, and I did everything I was told. And I lost 200 pounds, and it's not the weight loss for me that was what did it. It was like realizing that all of the failures that I had attached to weight loss had nothing to do with my weight, because bullshit still happened.
Yeah.
People were still, boys were still nasty to
Yeah.
me. People still were impatient. People still did all the things that I thought were just I mean, I thought everything was because of my weight. And it was like this powerful moment of it's not like I'm skinny and all of a sudden the whole world is beautiful. It
Right.
was just like oh, I realized for the first time I was like, I'm gonna have to work on my head. I'm
Right.
gonna have to work on my brain and like the way I think about things. And that's been the journey of my 30s. I had the weight
Right.
loss surgery right when I turned 31. I'm 36 now. And like that's all I work on is mental health. I have a lot of coaches. And I don't think I ever would have done that. I really thought that the weight was the issue.
Right.
My entire life, I was like, I'm gonna lose weight and things are gonna be awesome. And then I lost weight and I was like, oh no, like people are just people. And
Right.
some of them are great, some of them are selfish, some of them are generous, some of them are kind, some of them are smart, some of them are mean, some of them are everybody's their own flavor, and those flavors change, and things come and go. But I thought it was all about me. I thought it was all about who I was, and that's why they were acting the way that they were. And getting removed from that has been the most empowering thing that ever happened to me, right? Because then all of a sudden I don't have reactions now to people, and I'm just like, oh, I was like, they're stressed today.
Right.
All I think about is like, is there anything I can do to help them? Like, how can I be of service? Like, how can I help get them out of whatever space they're in? But I don't have to own it. It's not about me.
Well, and I think that we both learned that someone else's behavior is not their reaction to that to you. It's their reflection of them.
Oh, totally.
And to me, that was huge. I mean, I kept thinking to myself that, oh, well, people are reacting to me because I'm not good enough, because I'm not in the right place. And it wasn't that at all. But I think that for me, I had to get healthy to realize that it wasn't the reaction to me, it was the reflection of them.
Yeah. And getting healthy and just like living a life. I mean, it does clear the fog out of my
Oh my
brain.
God.
I can just see clearly, right? Like
Yeah.
even now, like, I'm a normal person. I'm not always like super fit. Right now I'm actually going through like one of my thicker phases, right? Like this is
Yeah,
fine.
me
And I
too.
accept it for what it is. But I can also tell you that like when I've been like pigging out and I'm foggy.
Yeah.
My brain's not working, and it's like not as easy for me to see things as they are because I'm lost in kind of like this world of this I mean, Melissa Urban, she has the book. It
Yeah.
starts with food, and I'm like, it really does start with food. It
Yeah.
affects everything in my head. It affects my energy. It affects how I see things. Anyway, so health. Oh, and pineapple. Pineapple's healthy, but pineapple is also,
Pineapple means hush.
it sure does. All right, so we are gonna hear
Pineapple.
pineapple. Pineapple. I mean, it could be voicemail, but it's gonna be pineapple.
Hey, Tyler and Glenda. Tyler, huge fan of yours from $1 Million Listing. This is Nancy from Toronto, Canada. I really struggle with weight issues because I have a lot of health issues and depression. Tyler, really admire how you really lost all the weight, kept it off. How'd you do it? Like, I know there's no magic secret, no magic bullet, but sometimes we have to look to people to lead by example. You're certainly leading by example. So if you could just share a little bit more about how you did it, that would be great. Thanks so much.
I assure you, I had no idea that was going to be the voicemail.
I
I
mean,
assure you, that's so weird. Nancy, Firstly, I feel you. You know, I have learned that I had this is just for me, addiction is addiction is addiction. You know, like when I'm feeling like I don't have community and I'm not connected and I'm not a part of, or something's not right in my life, you know, I turn to a substance. And for a long time, that substance was food. You know, and then after started to control that relationship with food, and I wasn't working on like the root causes that were driving me to it. That was really what made alcohol went from bad to out of control. You know, and through honestly for me through AA, I mean, I've learned probably the most helpful things around um addiction and substances, and I do consider food a substance. And I don't think a lot of people talk about food as an addiction, as a, you know, I think they think of drugs and alcohol and cigarettes, but I think food is the number one.
Oh,
You know, it's the
absolutely.
number one. So many people turn to food.
Because it's acceptable.
It's acceptable. I can
Yeah.
show up to work and still get my job done if I overate all night,
Right.
you know? But if I drank all night or did drugs all night, you might notice, you know,
Right.
and if I eat all day at work, I can still function, you know?
Right.
And so because it's acceptable, people I don't think do the mental health side of it, but you know, the living in the steps, like the 12 steps of like admitting like I have a problem, I turn to these things and having that awareness and you know accepting that I need to work a program and for me if anybody does steps and it's not just around alcohol, I mean there's 12 steps for lots of things, but you know for me it was steps 4, 5, and 6 where I learned what my problems were. And that's like step 4 is where you really dive in and you learn about your triggers, like what is it about me that makes me angry, that makes me selfish, that makes me all of these, that makes me sad, that you know really diving in on what those things were. And then you know step 5 is just like you actively like ask you know in AA it's a higher power, but you know we talk about like having these things removed and just like take these things away from me. And then but step 10 is like living in that, right? And so every single day, at the end of each day, you're like, do I owe anybody an apology? Do I need to call and make an amends? You know, do I, you know, and you write these things out and you handle things when they happen. And for me, that keeps me so like mentally fresh that like, and I know that when I'm like in those moments of overeating, I'm like, what's wrong? You know, I stop and I'm like, okay, I'm like, I know I don't need this. I'm like, but I'm going to it for something. And I was like, it's usually because there's something disturbed in me. And I can usually say like, you know what? I didn't do my best in this situation and I need to make it right. Or you know, this person upset me and I didn't handle it correctly, or I upset this person and I didn't handle it correctly. And, you know, they were like, if you're living your life in a way that you never have an awkward elevator ride, you know, you can get into an elevator with any person on the planet and, and it's fine, you know, because even if you've had like that issue, you've handled it, you're living a good life.
Yeah.
You know, and like that's a rule I try to live by, and it keeps cravings at bay, it keeps things at bay. But you know, going back into it's one day at a time.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm like, I might want to lose 20 pounds, which is kind of where I am right now. I want to get these 20 pounds off, and it's so easier for me to be like, I want to be 20 pounds lighter by the summer. But you know, I'm taking it a moment and a day at a time. I'm like, how am I going to live today?
Yeah.
Because those are the things that stack up. Don't go so big picture, Nancy. Go like, what do I need to do today?
Small.
And like you can think about tomorrow and keeping it a meal at a time, because I
Yeah.
also know like if I have like if I overeat at lunch, I'm so quick to say like, well then I'm just gonna eat what I want today and it's the weekend, so I'll start again on Monday. I'm like, you can just let that moment be that moment, you know what I
Right.
mean? You can have that bad meal and then go back to a healthy meal the next meal, you know what I mean? I think so many people think it needs to be in a pattern and it needs to start on a specific day at a specific hour, moment by moment. Do your best.
Yeah. The next moment can change your life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What I feel like you have stuff around that too, right? Like,
Well, you know, I went through weight loss. But for me, eating was there was a comfort in it.
mm-hmm.
Um, and I see it now because I'm heavier than I want to be. Those 20
Mm-hmm.
pounds like you. But I think that in what people don't really realize It's one decision. It's one moment. Not to drink that Coke, not to eat that piece of pizza. Just one thing. And building on that one thing makes a huge change in your life. And I think that people think, I've got to start on Monday. I've got to cut out all of the food. I can only eat celery. And that's a recipe for disaster. I think that just making one healthy decision and building on that time after time after time changes your entire life.
It does. It does. And one question that I ask myself before I'm about to indulge in anything, and it's just one that just like is a really good psych trick, is how do I want to feel in 30 minutes?
Yeah.
You know, because every time I overindulge, it is so temporary. You know,
Yeah.
and 30 minutes later, I'm on like my sugar crash and I'm feeling ashamed of myself and I'm a little bit depressed. And like these
Yeah.
things are, I'm just like, how do I want to feel 30 minutes from now? Are the next 2 minutes of eating this worth what I'm going to feel in 30 minutes?
The best math you can calculate is the future cost of your current decision.
I learned that one from you. It's my favorite one I ever heard from you.
I love that quote.
Mm-hmm.
Calculate the future cost of your current decision.
Yeah.
Is it really worth it?
Yeah. I stole so many good ones from you. We could do an episode around sayings that I stole from you.
Glennda-isms.
Glennda-isms. But maybe next week, because we've gone over.
Again.
I don't think we went over that much. No, 31 minutes and 20 seconds.
Okay, good.
Look at us.
What's our next episode?
You will have to find out. And the only way you will find out is if you subscribe, rate, and review. Share it. Tell your friends.
I love it. I love it.
I know. Okay. I know. Here's things that are coming up, though. You being on dating apps. We're diving in deep on that.
Oh, my God.
You're going to get me on TikTok because I'm not on TikTok.
We've got to do that.
Those are the two that actually just came to my head. I can't remember, but they're good, y'all. We did it from the gas station to the bus station. Bye.